Robinson. It's a nationwide alcohol and food practice. Hannah is actually based in their Tampa office. Hannah concentrates on advising companies on on-premise retailers and, of course, off-premise as well. She and her team at Gray Robinson, including Elizabeth Conti, are well-versed in all of the three-tier aspects of alcohol, wholesaling, manufacturing, wholesaling, distribution, and the retail side of it. But I want to make sure everybody in the room knows this about their firm and their team. They are absolutely masters at managing mergers and acquisitions and getting all of the licensing done and transferred. They do just a remarkable job of that. So if you find yourself in need of that, in addition to all the other compliance issues, but that in particular is what I know that they are absolutely terrific at. We're very fortunate to have Hannah back with us. Hannah, please welcome Hannah, and Hannah, take it away. Thank you.
For that introduction, and really appreciate that highlight for the many things that our team does help hospitality industry members with. I'm here today to basically go over 5 what I call easy steps. Don't know if they're that easy, but I thought it sounded nice for the title. Where you can protect your license or at least decrease the liability that you may be presented with. So these are the 5 steps or considerations that we will be discussing today. The first one is the avoidance of over-service of alcohol to your patrons, as well as the second step, which is the prevention of service of alcohol to individuals who are under the age of 21. The third one is just understanding your state's or states' dram shop laws and understanding how that may impact how you sell and serve alcohol. The fourth is ensuring that your patrons avoid any areas within your establishment, areas where you did not put on your alcohol application that it is part of the licensed premises. So making sure that your patrons don't walk into those areas, consume alcohol, or even that your staff members don't sell alcohol from those areas. And the last is that I'm going to emphasize the importance of obtaining a liquor liability insurance policy. Just a quick highlight is that some states don't require it, however, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get one. So before we jump in and touch on each of those considerations, I thought it might be fun to kind of look into some of the quirky laws that are out there. There are plenty of them, but the first one, just to highlight an example, is in Arkansas on Christmas Day you can't sell alcohol. That's not in every state. There are certain holidays where a state or even a municipality may prohibit you from selling or serving alcohol. So it might be a little complicated if you forgot to get your alcohol for your Christmas dinner with your family. In Arkansas, you can't go to a store and pick up that alcohol that you needed. The second one is Arizona allows you to purchase alcohol via drive-thru at liquor stores. Again, not every state allows you to go in your car and go through that drive-thru like you would at a fast food restaurant to purchase alcohol. You can think of Louisiana, they have those drive-thru daiquiris, so that's another example. And lastly, I thought this one was interesting. North Carolina, you can get a DWI while you're on your farm tractor, so don't do that, or a motorized scooter. Before they actually, and I did look at the legislative history and I highly regret it, you could also get a DWI by drinking and being intoxicated while on a horse. So I wonder why they decided to carve out an exception. So now if you're intoxicated on a horse, you actually can't get a DWI. So I'm not sure how that came about, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. And I'm sure I would love to hear anyone else that has any quirky laws that they're aware of in other states after my presentation. So it's fun. Okay, so back to our topic and the avoidance of over-serving alcohol to your patrons. So I would say every state has a law that would prohibit you as a licensee, as well as your staff, whether it's your bartenders or even your staff members that are cleaning up, or anyone from over-serving alcohol to your patrons around your establishment. Of course, the issue with that is if they're over-served, not only are you violating the law that prohibits you from over-service, however, additionally, they can leave your premises or even stay on your premises and conduct illegal activity where you may be something that you want to highly have not only internal policies, but also comply with your state, local requirements when it comes to the service of alcohol. So how do you make sure that your staff members don't overserve, or what is overservice of alcohol? So the first step is you have to look at your state laws, as mentioned. You would look also at your localities, ordinances, to see if there's any additional restrictions or requirements. And then of course, as Andrea had mentioned on her presentation, a lot of it comes down to training. So even if your state does not require that your employees get any training, it's a really important thing that every single person that touches alcohol, as well as your principals, get training on how they can ensure, or at least know the flag, that someone in your establishment has been overserved or is intoxicated, to ensure that no one's just continuously serving alcohol, selling alcohol to someone that it should be a red light to stop. And there's examples, so during that training you would kind of go over not only the state requirements, but also just the practical signs that they can see when they're serving alcohol to an individual, that they may be at that level of intoxication. So obviously there's slurred speech, not being able to walk straight, I guess, is another example. Just reflexes are kind of wonky, and those are like the initial training situations that you can get your employees to kind of identify. And then once you get to that point, then you should also be training them on the laws when it comes to how old that the employee themselves has to be when they serve alcohol, because every state varies. So in some states, an individual who is 18 can't be a bartender, however they can go and clean up alcohol that's on tables. So in most cases, to be a bartender in a lot of states, you have to be 21. However, to be a waiter or waitress, you can be 18, 19, 20. So you have to know about those laws. Additionally, there's some states that prohibit employees from consuming alcohol while they are just serving alcohol to other individuals. So it's important that even if you have an internal policy or don't have an internal policy, that you work with your employees to understand that while they are working, while they are in their shift, they should not be accepting a free shot from one of the patrons, to ensure that they, as an individual, can recognize that a patron of yours is intoxicated or is at the level that the law has determined is too intoxicated to continuously be served by your employees. The next consideration that I wanted to touch on was the prevention of service to individuals, patrons who are under the age of 21. So of course, I wanted to first touch on internal policies when it comes to ID verification. This is something that not everyone knows, but in most states, it's actually not a requirement for the licensee or the establishment, whether it's a hotel, restaurant, bar, to ID verify before the individual enters into the licensed premises, or even before they order alcohol. It's not a requirement to ID verify that they're 21. What is a requirement, or what is illegal actually, is the sale and service of alcohol to someone who's under the age of 21. So it's become an industry standard to ID verify every patron before they receive or purchase alcohol, to ensure that your license is not at risk. That is key, because that, for a lot of regulators, a lot of state regulators, and even local regulators, this is definitely an enforcement priority. Is the previous slide, which deals with, and this slide, that deals with the prevention of alcohol service to people who are under 21, and then the previous one that dealt with the service of alcohol, or over service of alcohol to patrons. So if your staff member, sells to someone who is under the age of 21, your license may be at risk of suspension or revocation. So it's very important that your internal policies either match or are more strict than the state and local laws that apply to your establishment. And then when it comes to the types of IDs that your staff members can review and determine whether or not that individual is 21 or over, a lot of states, if not all states actually, they have a list of IDs that can be used to age verify. So a lot of times it's government issued IDs, sometimes military IDs, and then what's and passports. And what's newer to the discussion are mobile IDs, so they're usually referred to as MIDs or digital IDs. And I actually have been speaking with a number of clients about whether or not they should be accepting mobile IDs when they're age verifying. And it's a pretty hot topic right now. There are a number of states that have either a permanent program for mobile IDs or are currently testing or very close to implementing their mobile ID programs. Arizona is a good example of a program, as well as Louisiana in particular, because Louisiana actually Louisiana ETC has a guidance document out there. So for their alcohol licensees as well as tobacco licensees and how they should handle mobile IDs when they're age verifying. So it's a really good idea for you to work with counsel as well as to consider implementing your age verification policies to capture all the requirements when it comes to mobile IDs and ensure that your staff members who are age verifying feel comfortable. Because I can imagine not everyone knows that mobile IDs are in existence, A, and B, if they shouldn't even be allowed to accept them. So you don't want a situation where your employees should have or could have accepted a mobile ID, but they just are too apprehensive not to. So it really comes down to training those industry member employees who are going to be looking at the IDs and determining whether or not this individual can or cannot be served or sold alcohol.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Are you aware of any technology that's out there that, because I was in an establishment recently where they carded me and they scanned the back of my driver's license as the ID verifier. And I didn't know if there's technology that helps liquor establishments, number one, verify someone's age, but number two, tells that establishment, is this a real ID or a fake ID?
Yeah, so actually that was going to be to my next on that fake ID. No worries, I love that. So yes, there are POS systems that they are able to scan the back like you described, and it can tell you whether or not it's a real ID or not. The only problem is when it's a borrowed ID, of course the ID is real, but it may not be the right individual. But it definitely helps. Mobile IDs, that's also a really big reason why a lot of licensees are accepting them, because that's part of the program is, or the mobile ID programs that the states have moved forward with, is it's utilized a lot by police officers in those states, but also by license holders. It's kind of two apps talking to each other, and they can verify the authenticity of that mobile ID that's being presented. And what's also nice, I'm kind of going off topic, but you're able to, as the patron, it's a privacy benefit for everyone that holds a mobile ID, because you can hide all your address. You can hide every detail that's on your driver's license that you feel is very private and you don't want to share it with everyone. That you go to a bar and you share it with a security there, you can hide all of it, and all that shows is your birthday to verify your age is over the age of 20 or 21 or over. So yeah, so there's definitely POS systems, there's definitely scanners, and then mobile IDs also have that way of making sure that those IDs are authentic. And yeah, so that's pretty much the last point I wanted to make on this, as well as some of the trainings that you have with your employees, is for them to be able to, they don't have those amazing technology out there, that they can look at the ID and know that it's not fake or borrowed. So some examples would be if it's peeling, if the ID is expired, if in the back there's usually barcodes, if it looks funky, or a big thing that a lot of licensees should consider is training your employees to at least know the state license in the state where you operate, so if they're familiar with the characteristics. Because if they are reviewing a license and it looks different or is missing certain aspects of that license, that's an easy way to train them, and you can catch it. Ensure that you don't have people under age of 21. Yes?
I also heard that if there's an undercover, cop there, and they have somebody underage that they're trying to take to the counter, get alcohol served to you. And if the person on the counter asks, are you 21? Then if that person lies, that's not, something that undercover cop could bust you for or take your license based on. If you ask, they cannot lie.
You're saying the patron can't lie?
That's correct. If it's a person that's being put up to do that by an undercover cop.
So a mystery shopping situation set up by the local alcoholic beverage group. They're coming in, I think, you're saying if the bartender or server says, are you 21?
Right.
They have to respond truthfully.
That's correct.
I've heard that as well. I'm not convinced that they do it, but I have heard that. But I'm not sure what would happen in the case if they tried to make it anyway, but then you've got a verbal, I asked if they were 21, right? I don't know, it's an interesting issue because I've seen more and more of those mystery shopping type kind of traps.
Right, it's a good trap.
I think that would be the argument. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, that's, so at least when it comes to liability for the license holder as well as your staff members, there are certain states where the staff members that are serving alcohol need to be safe serve certified or need to have a license. So that even their individual licenses may be at risk. There are requirements as to how you age verify those individuals and whether or not the licensee or your employee are at risk, not only civil penalties for civil penalties, but also criminal offense. So it really depends on what that statute says needs to happen in order for the licensee to be held liable. Okay, third. So it's really important that you understand your state's dram shop laws because they all vary. It really comes down to the standard. So do you as a licensee, do you have to know or should you have reasonably known that the individual was intoxicated when you served alcohol or negligently served alcohol to the individual? Was it obvious that the person was intoxicated, or should you have known based on their behaviors? All that language varies. The standards vary by state. Why do you guys need to know, and why I think it's a big consideration for licensed establishments is because the vast majority of states, there's 43 states at least that have dram shop laws. So I definitely wanted to highlight that for you all, and ensuring that when your staff members or you as the licensee or your principals are serving alcohol, that they are aware that not only is your license at risk, which is kind of the entire topic of this presentation, but also you may be opening yourself up to criminal offenses. And I'm sure that when we get to the end of this conference, when we're reviewing all the highlights of all the case law out there, that there is going to be a dram shop case, because there is plenty, and if there's not, it is a top consideration for you all to kind of review every single state where you operate the dram shop case law, for sure, because it gives you kind of an insight as to what has happened in other licensed establishments, what actions were deemed to be a misstep for the licensee or their staff members that opened them their license as well as their licensed establishment up to criminal offenses or even civil penalties, and the loss of the license is a consideration. Fourth is ensuring that your patrons don't walk off your licensed premises and consume alcohol in unlicensed premises. It's a huge issue when you have a very large establishment, so I'm thinking hotels or large resorts, I'm thinking of theme parks. It's very important that during that training process that you have with your staff members, that you review what areas of your premises are not licensed for the sale and consumption of alcohol. Because I can think of plenty of instances where a patron could walk through a staircase that's not licensed, a bathroom may not be licensed, closets, office spaces. So it's important that you kind of have that data available to them. What I'm referring to is the staff members, in particular the employees who sell and serve alcohol, as well as make it obvious for your patrons the areas where they should not be consuming or should not be sold alcohol. That also is a signal for your employees to know as well. So some ideas would be signage, which some people don't like just because, or operators don't like because it doesn't look pretty. But signage is really obvious for people to know that they should not be stepping onto that area to consume alcohol, or for your employees not to set up a bar in a certain space within your premises. Another idea is to put physical barriers. So whether it's kind of like a, I'm trying to think of the word, but you just delineate where you can and cannot allow your consumers to step into that area and consume alcohol. I think those are like very easy ways of showing to not only your staff members, but also the consumers that are at your premises that they should not be consuming alcohol in that area. And why is it important? It's important for liability reasons, as we discussed, as well as just your license. Because by law, under your state, or the state where you operate, you cannot sell or serve alcohol anywhere other than the licensed premises. There are some exceptions where states do allow alcohol to be sold and served in areas that are not licensed, but as a licensed premises, we need to ensure that it's only being, the alcohol is only being sold and served in those areas that are licensed. Yes? Oh, but you had a question for me. Okay, perfect. And then lastly, I want to emphasize, oh, do you have a question?
So if you have a guest that's not flying banquet space, which is not licensed, they want to serve alcohol.
So those are the exceptions I was referring to. So catering, in some states you can, if the unlicensed premises can be utilized. You can hire a licensed caterer in some states, or you can hire an unlicensed caterer in other states because it's allowed. So every state varies when it comes to the sale and service of alcohol in a generally unlicensed premises. So it depends on the state that you're in.
What if they're not a caterer, or if they're just,
Any unlicensed, should we require them to get a license? Is that what you're saying?
So it depends on the state. So there are also exceptions in state alcohol codes that allow an unlicensed premises and an unlicensed, because you can think of weddings. That's a good example where weddings are hosted at a banquet space, they're not licensed, they bring their own alcohol, and in some states that's allowed. Other states it's not. So it's really important that you look at your state laws when it comes to unlicensed premises and the service and or sale of alcohol. So it's going to vary on the state, as well as the municipality. I would look into that as well. So the
Just be on your radar.
So the fifth consideration, or easy step as I put it, is the importance of getting liquor liability insurance policy for your establishment. As mentioned, there are some states that do require that you get liquor liability insurance. A state that comes to mind is Illinois. And Illinois is also an example going back to the dram shop law, where they actually by statute will every year actually they look at it and they establish the parameters of how much the amount of liquor liability insurance, as well as the maximum amount of penalty you can get as an individual or for your property in a dram shop law in a case law. So liquor liability is not automatically obtained when you get a general liquor liability policy. It's generally excluded when it comes to the sale and service of alcohol that leads to bodily injury or property damage. So in order to protect yourselves as a licensed establishment that is normally exposed to liquor liability, they would need to get a full liquor liability policy. There's another type of policy that is available for caterers or individuals and businesses that do not serve alcohol on a daily basis. However, for establishments like hotels, restaurants, bars, it's important that you consider obtaining a full liquor liability policy to protect yourselves in case one of your patrons harms another individual or harms or destroys property. So I wanted to highlight that, and of course course, if you're in a state that requires it, I'm sure that you all comply with your state's laws when it comes to liquor liability policies. And that is it for me. I just wanted to highlight, just always regularly review your state and municipalities' laws, ordinances, regulations, agency policy documents. It's key, they change often. I wouldn't say every day, but it feels like every month for me. So it's important that you review those laws and ordinances that apply to you, not only with your principals, but also with your staff members. With irregular training is definitely recommended. And in cases where you're in a state that requires a regular training, that you review those laws with them, and especially ones that have changed. It's also important to stay up to date when it comes to your internal policies. So it's important that at least annually you review them, determine whether or not they have to be changed, and reviewed with your staff members. So thank you all.